Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. I have the Dictionary of Cultural Literacy out today because I want to look up and try to understand a little more the words. And I know a lot of you know this. I know a little bit. Communist and how do you spell this word? F-A. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's right. And fascist. And the reason I'm looking these up is because some of you know last week I posted a video that I promise you I did not realize would cause some of the reactions that it did. I was reading the text messages from the Signal group chat, which I just wanted to know what was said. And so I thought probably there are other people like me who are like, what does it say? I don't know. But since then, and because of other things I've posted in the past, some things that might surprise you, I have been referred to as a communist or a socialist communist or a liberal socialist communist or a stupid liberal. Okay. And then occasionally I've been called a fascist. And one time I was called a communist fascist. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. Well, then just recently over on the app Blue Sky, somebody, I don't even know what they do over there, like reshared my thing, a post, and said that I was asked what level of fascism my video was. I was like, what is happening? So I'm trying to figure out what exactly fascism is and if I'm now become a fascist. So I thought we could get out the book of cultural literacy. I'm certain that within this book we will find our answers. Maybe. I already know my answer is I am no level of either of these things. I am none of them. Let me just start by telling you people are using these phrases wrong. Okay. Or phrase might not be the word. Ideologies. Sorry, this cold still with me. I have a little I'm looking while I'm looking in my drawer. I'm doing two things at once. So one of these right now. But I think I'm gonna need another one. The day this throat issue is gone, I will celebrate. Okay, sorry about that. Hold on. Why don't I see this? FAS. There it is, fascism. Page 218. Okay. Oops. And then where will communism be? Let's see. Now, in case you haven't figured it out, I'm not a political science person. I'm not a historian. I'm just a person looking this up just so we can all know what we're talking about. Communion. Nope. Communism. 303. Okay. All right, I wonder why they're so far apart. 218. Whoa, it's big. It's a biggie, guys. Okay, fascism. Let me clear my throat before I start. And away we go. A system of government that flourished in Europe from 1920 to the end of World War II. Germany under Hitler, Italy under Mussolini, and Spain under Franco were all fascist states. As a rule, fascist governments are dominated by a dictator who usually possesses a magnetic personality, wears a showy uniform, and rallies his followers by mass parades, appeals to strident nationalism, and promotes suspicion or hatred of both foreigners and impure people within his own nation, such as the Jews in Germany. Although both communism and fascism are forms of totalitarianism, fascism does not demand state ownership of the means of production, nor is fascism committed to the achievement of economic equality. In theory, communism opposes the identification of government with a single charismatic leader, the cult of personality, which is the cornerstone of fascism. Whereas communists are considered left-wing, fascists are usually described as right-wing. Okay, so to the left, communism. And to the right, fascism. What would be short? FSC? Okay. Done. Okay, today, fascist is used loosely to refer to military dictatorships, as well as governments or individuals that profess racism and that act in an arbitrary, high-handed manner. So maybe if I'm giving our person who put out a message about me, she is referring to the arbitrary, high-handed manner. Could be. I mean, I'm just going to say. And what she kind of said was, what level of fascism is somebody making a video about people getting killed in a text message? Where is this effing okay? You know, something like that. And I certainly didn't mean it to make slight or little of people being murdered. That's the opposite of, why I was reading it. So, if anyone felt that way, I do apologize. That was not the intent. But it was in the news. It was all over. I was just reading it so that we all know what it says, because I was reading it anyway. Okay, so now let's look up communism, page 303. What am I holding this page for? I don't remember. I know we looked something up and I marked it, but I can't think of what it was. Susan B. Anthony. One year for Halloween, I dressed as a flapper. It was cute. Let's see. Okay. We're getting there. What did I say? 303. Wow, it's in a different section. Isn't that weird that for some reason fascist was under American politics, but communism was under world politics? That's interesting, isn't it? Okay, 303. What's here? Communism. An economic and social system envisioned by the 19th century German scholar Karl Marx. In theory, under communism, all means of production are owned in common, rather than by individuals. See Marxism and Marxism-Leninism. In practice, a single authoritarian party controls both the political and economic systems. In the 20th century, communism has been associated with the economic and political systems of China and the Soviet Union, and of the satellites of the Soviet Union. but this book is old. This book is from the 90s, so that a lot of that satellite stuff's changed. Compare to capitalism and socialism. Okay, we will. It's like so many things, I feel like, where if you start to go too far left, that was a terrible era, or too far right, you get yourself into trouble. And eventually, they kind of start to meet up. They go like in a big circle. This is true with so many things. I feel like I've talked about that with other things. Okay, so what are we looking up now? Let's look up capitalism and socialism. Capitalism and social. All right, so fascists, they said Mussolini, Hitler. Communists are Marx and Lenin. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, it's right here on this page. How funny. Capitalism, an economic and political system characterized by a free market for goods and services. By a free market for goods and services, and private control of production and consumption. Okay. That was capitalism. And then socialism must be right here. Let's see. Socialism. An economic system in which the production and distribution of goods are controlled substantially by the government rather than by private enterprise, and in which corporations rather than competition guides economic activity. I read that wrong. I was like, that doesn't sound right. Let's start over. An economic system in which the production and distribution of goods are controlled substantially by the government rather than by private enterprise, and in which cooperation rather than competition guides economic activity. There are many varieties of socialism. Some socialists tolerate capitalism as long as the government maintains the dominant influence over the economy. Others insist on an abolition of private enterprise. Abolition. All communists are socialists, but not all socialists are communists. Now, having read that, I can't remember if I told you at the beginning that, I can't remember if I told you, but one time years ago, I had some friends over to watch football. And so we were all sitting around having a football game. And this is at a time when Detroit, the city of Detroit, had been doing very, very, very bad. I mean, it was in shambles, to be honest. And part of that was the automobile industry was really suffering. And I wasn't living in Detroit at the time. But one of the guys asked me how I felt about the government bailing out the auto industry. And I said, oh, I think that's good because Detroit was going, to heck, and it needed the help. And he said, what are you, a socialist? And at the time I was kind of offended, like, well, I just think it's a good thing. But having read it, I think I was making it was a socialist thing. The government's helping private industry. So in that moment, I guess I was. But I don't believe that I've ever been a communist or a fascist on this channel. Now that I have read these things, I don't think I've gotten there. So, fascism, if you go too far to the right, it becomes racist, they said. Very like nationalism, nationalist. Is that the word I'm looking for? And then communism gets rid of private property, private, businesses, and the government controls everything. So that's really bad. And fascism is really bad. Fascism, the government controls everything, but you still own property. But they're also very nationalist and often racist. Does that sound right? This is like an authoritarian, militaristic with centralized power. And this is, you don't usually have, they said, a single figurehead. It's more like the government is controlling everything and we're all just working for a common cause, which sounds good, but then once you lose control of everything in your life, you don't like that anymore. I meant it sounds good in the sense that like people join cults because they want to, everything relates to a cult with me. They like the idea of like, we're all going to live here and be happy dappy, but it never works out. It never works out. You've got to try to find something that's like neither one of these sides, but somewhere in between. So I am relieved to say that I do not believe that I am fascist or communist. So there we go. Although this is an absolute monarchy. No, it's an absolute, what's the one? Oh yeah, monarchy. Yeah. Because this channel is ruled by one person, a monarch, usually a king or a queen. That's me. Whose actions are restricted neither by written law nor by custom. A system different from a constitutional monarchy and from a republic. Absolute monarchy persisted in France from 1789 and in Russia in 1970. This channel is an absolute monarchy. Okay, that was not very good, was it? Do I need to learn more and refilm it? Maybe. Look, there's Lenin. Oh, where's Marx? We never looked up Marxism. We could probably do a longer video where I actually study and talk more about capitalism and conservatism and anarchism and libertarianism, authoritarianism, all the isms. That takes some study. What was I looking up? Marx. Let's look up Marx. Then we'll look up Hitler too. And Mussolini. Who else did I say? Lenin. M-A-R-X. Where are you? Marx Karl. 226 and 447. Let's see. Let's look up Marxism, actually, I guess. 99 and 309. Let's go to 309. Look at that. Marxism, the doctrines of Karl Marx, and his associate Frederick Engels on economics, politics, and society. They include the notion of economic determinism, that political and social structures are determined by the economic conditions of people. Marxism calls for classless society where all means of production are commonly owned. Communism. Excuse me. A system to be reached as an inevitable result of the struggle between the leaders of capitalism and the workers. A system to reach as an inevitable result between the struggle between leaders of Marxism-Leninism. The doctrines of Marxism as applied by Lenin, a founder of the Soviet Union, to the building of Marxist nations. With Karl Marx, Lenin called for classless society where all means of production would be commonly owned. Communism. So, I never even thought about it. So stupid. That commonly owned. Communism. Are they? That's where they. Okay. Hold on. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Unlike some Marxists, however, Lenin stressed bold revolutionary action and insisted that a strong communist party would be needed in Marxist nation to direct the efforts of the workers. Oh, great. Sorry, this is where they stop paying you and tell you you're lucky you get to live on our land. Marxist nations must therefore be prepared for war. Eventually, according to Marxism-Leninism, the rigid governmental structures that have characterized the former Soviet Union and other Marxist nations will not be necessary. The withering away of the state will occur. A major problem for Marxism-Leninism has been the difficulty of abandoning these governmental structures. I don't know what that said. But basically, if the government controls everything, then they go, you just don't get paid. You get to go to the bread line and get bread, and you live on our property, and, everybody's equal, except that everybody isn't equal because the guys at the top always are living it up. Let's be honest. I'm not a historian. I don't know anything. I'm just guessing. Okay, what were we doing? That was Marxism. Let's look up. C, D, E, F, G. H, H, H. What am I going to do about my voice? What if it never comes back? What if I'm like this forever? Oh my gosh. I'll have to give up the whole channel. Okay. Where are you? Wait, what is this? Why did it say Hitler? It says 423. I don't know. 221. Let's go to 221. Adolf, furious. Adolf Hitler, a German political leader of the 20th century, born in Austria. Hitler's early program for Germany is contained in his book Mein Kampf. He dreamed of creating a master race of pure Aryans, which, if you don't know, is white people, who would rule for 1,000 years as a third German empire, or Third Reich. Hitler, and here he is, doing the Heil, led the Nazi Party and began to rule Germany in 1933 as a fascist dictator with the title Der Führer. He supervised the murder of 6 million Jews. I mean, it's like a number that is so incomprehensible. 6 million. And other supposed enemies of the Reich. Hitler began World War II by invading Poland in 1939. He reportedly committed suicide in 1945 when Germany's defeat was imminent. The official greeting between Nazis was Heil Hitler. This is why I get mad when people joke about this, because I'm a little bit of a I don't know, I've read a lot of stuff. I don't want to say I'm a history buff. I wouldn't go that far. But I've read a lot and obviously seen the movies because I'm a movie buff. And yeah, it's terrible. Really terrible. What else? All right, so under our fascist leaders, we have Hitler. And Mussolini was in Italy during World War II. Is he going to be right here? Because I don't really know how to spell Mussolini. But then under communism, we have Marx, Lenin in Russia. Where's Mussolini? So back here, must be back here. B, C, D, E, F, G. Mussolini. Benito Mussolini. M, U, S, S, O, L, I, N, I. Okay, Benito Mussolini. Hold on. Oh my gosh. An Italian general and dictator of the 20th century, Mussolini formed a fascist government in Italy in the 1920s and allied Italy with Germany as one of the Axis powers of World War II. Mussolini, known as Il Duce, or Deuce, I don't know, the leader, was shot by his Italian opponents near the end of the war. All right, well, we're going to have to learn more, I think. Look, here is Mao, who was a leader in China. The doctrines of Mao Zedong, most notably the doctrine that a continuous revolution is necessary if leaders of a communist state are to be kept in touch with the people. That a continuous revolution. Mao. Hold on, I gotta read up on this guy. I don't know. Mao Zedong, a Chinese revolutionary leader of the 20th century. He led an army of workers and peasants on the Long March in the 1920s and used guerrilla warfare techniques successfully on both the Japanese invaders and the forces of the Chinese government under Chiang Kai-shek. Oh boy. In 1949, his armies took over the country and established the People's Republic of China. Mao continued as chairman of China's Communist Party and premier. His little red book, Quotients from Chairman Mao, was standard reading for school children of the country. I have to switch to a whisper again. Toward the end of his life, he brought about the great proletarian cultural revolution in which all capitalist or elitist culture was to be purged. Mao died in 1976. Here's Karl Marx, a German scholar of the 19th century, the founder of Marxism, the fundamental theory of communism. Much of his work, including Kapital and the Communist Manifesto, was done with Friedrich Engels. Marx lived outside Germany most of his life, notably in London, where he wrote Capital. He organized the First International in the 1860s. Here's Nationalist China, the Republic of China, the government on the island of Taiwan, established by Chiang Kai-shek in the late 1940s after he and his followers were driven from the mainland by the communists under Mao Zedong. Until 1979, the United States treated the nationalist Chinese government as the legitimate government of all China. Nationalist China and the United States still have unofficial diplomatic relations. This has totally changed, I believe, like Taiwan and this whole, I don't know, somebody in the comments who's smart can tell us. Nazis. Geek. Talk to you soon. Sorry about my voice again. I don't know what I'm going to do. May have to take a break. Soviet Union, Stalin. Stalin, the form of Marxism associated with Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Stalinism emphasizes the repression of all dissent. See what happens? Often by brutal means, a rigid adherence to government management of economic life, and the domination of all communist movements worldwide by the Soviet Union. In holding to these beliefs, Stalin opposed Leon Trotsky. I had a friend from Russia a long time ago, and her uncle was imprisoned because he spoke out against the government, and he wrote a book, and it was very, very interesting and enlightening. But I tell you what, you don't want to go either way too far. Basically, you never want the government to have that much control. They can't be trusted. In my opinion. Nelson Mandela. We did a video on the Mandela effect. That's why I remember that picture. Let's go back to this and see, why did I mark this page? What was I looking at? The preamble to the Constitution, maybe? Then Alamo. Maybe it was the Alamo. I don't remember. The preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Sacagawea, a young Native American woman who guided Meriwether Lewis and William Clark on their expedition to explore territory gained through the Louisiana Purchase. Some of you know my dad has Alzheimer's, but he's been really enjoying these books. They are called like Who Was, What Was, Where Was, or whatever. And then they go on a different subject each book. They're very good. They're very good books. I showed one time, I think. But he has one about Sacagawea, and he has long been interested in Lewis and Clark. He even went like on a trip where he kind of, learned a lot about them. And now his memory isn't perfect, obviously, but he was telling me how he knows a lot about them, but he didn't remember ever really learning about Sacagawea and how important she was to the mission until he got the book that said Who Was Sacagawea. And I said, well, that's not unusual for women to not get credit. The Nuremberg trials, the trials of Nazi leaders conducted after World War II. A court set up by the victorious Allies tried 22 former officials, including Hermann Göring, in Nuremberg, Germany, for war crimes. Göring, I feel like I'm saying that, Göring, I can't think. And 11 others were sentenced to death. Many of the highest officials in Nazi Germany, including Adolf Hitler, Joseph Goebbels, and Heinrich Himmler, had committed suicide before they could be brought to trial, and Göring killed himself before he could be executed. Several of those accused at Nuremberg trials offered the defense that they were merely carrying out orders of their superiors. This defense was not accepted. If we ever want to get dark, I know some stories, man. Bad stuff. I've read a lot of books. All right, I'll talk to you soon. So the further left, the more socialist, the more communist, the further right, the more authoritarian, and the more fascist. That's the words we were kind of needing, weren't they? Authoritarian and socialist. Does that sound right? I think so. So on this side, there's suppression of opposition. There's heavy military nationalism, centralized power, government control over all aspects of life except for private property, which is usually allowed. And you have the types like Hitler and Mussolini. On the left is communism, which is equal and collective ownership. There's no private business. You have the government controlling everything. But if it gets too far beyond democratic socialism and into communism, then you have government control of everything, including property. And that is Marxist and Stalin. We didn't write Stalin. Marx, Lenin, Stalin. Now in the middle here, there's your regular conservatives and your regular